being capital efficient, it requires like being really purposeful about it and intentional, being in control of it, right? Because there are times when I'm building business where you would say, that doesn't look very capital efficient at all. Like he's just investing in all these things, they're over their skis on this. That's okay, I found, as long as you're intentional about in having a plan, right? I'm going to raise this kind of money over this amount of time. I'm going to make these bets here and these investments here. I'm going to overextend here, but I'm going to probably make sure I got an offset over here. That is part of the way I operate companies to be capital efficient. At any given stage of the company, it would look different to different people. And being capital efficient means that you've tried to figure out the perfect, and nothing's ever perfect, but you've tried to figure out the perfect balance between capital you need and how you need to grow your business, which I think sometimes people think capital efficient means just don't spend money. Well, VCs don't invest in banks.
All right, Derek, thank you for joining me for Tech Scenes Unplugged. Excited to have you on, and let's start from the top. Tell me about DexCare.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff. Yeah, so DexCare is a data-driven intelligence company focused 100% on making healthcare access better for everyone. And because we're humans, we unfortunately all access healthcare, and increasingly such as we get older and older. So it's a big space in something that impacts everybody in the world. And the way we, just to double click on a little bit, the way we address it differently than others is we work primarily with health systems, which are organizations that own clinics and hospitals and so forth. And when people think of healthcare, that's usually a health system.
Right. And it's where they go.
It's where they go. Exactly. It's
Right.
the name. There are some other kinds of things out there, but when you think of a hospital, it's that kind of organization. And we help make sure that all the things that they offer care for people are much more discoverable, so that people like me can find them online and things like that easier. And then we also make sure that the providers and the health systems themselves have a voice as well, because the whole system breaks down if there's not some kind of traffic hopping going on to make sure that the right patient gets the right provider, right healthcare setting at the right time. So we balance all those folks and make it work. And the end result is people get access to a lot more care. They get it faster. Providers get burnt out less because they take care of patients that they can actually take care of. And health systems, you can't really in the healthcare world say that health systems make a bunch of money, because they actually are not that kind of businesses. But they go out of business less because make sure that they can treat people that can help sustain the business.
Now, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but you're a multi-time founder. So I know that you understand timing. So what is timing right now, and what's the intersection happening right now that you decided to do DexCare?
Oh, yeah, that's a very good question. A couple of things. So it starts with just kind of where I was going initially of just healthcare access. By definition, you can't access healthcare without having healthcare access. It's in the name. And so it already starts with a very large thing. And an interesting stat, the company I did prior to DexCare was in the surgery space. And I learned, unfortunately so, in that process that the average person will have 7 surgeries in their lifetime. So if you're you're up to, Jeff, it's going to get to 7 at some point if you're an average person. And that's pretty heavy stuff, right? Having surgery. And so you think of that as surgery, and then you think of all the other stuff where you got a runny nose or whatever, you need to access healthcare. It's a lot through our lifetime. And so it's already just big foundational Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of stuff. And then the reason it's very in vogue right now, and this is good and bad, is there's a well-documented shortage of providers. Less people are graduating from medical schools. There's, for a variety of reasons I won't get into. So there's less people to take care of people. And meanwhile, demographic trends and other things are making a lot more people that need to access healthcare. So those are going in the wrong direction.
Right.
And then finally, I'd say just we all know we have a healthcare system that's anybody that's looked at their insurance premiums that go up 20% a year or at least knows that it's not sustainable. And so you put all those things together and it's not even fair to say that the system's going to break. Like the system is breaking now. We're all paying more for it. We're waiting longer to get access to care. There's less people to take care of us. All of those, and we're going to need more of it. And so, unfortunately, it's one of those things where I wish it was as simple as the timing is right now. The problem is the timing was a decade ago to solve it. And so we're just trying to catch up now and make it.
Yeah. Does technology have to do with right now that you can do some of the stuff that you weren't able to?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, we're a data-driven intelligence company. And so the way it manifests itself to people like you and me as consumers of healthcare is we would do virtual visits online, or we would search for something on Google and find a clinic page or a doctor page and book something online. That's how it manifests itself to us. All of that's powered, though, Gen AI, and it truly is Gen AI. It's generating a new care option for that individual showing up on a page somewhere that you can now take advantage of. It's generating that appointment, et cetera. And so that's the other thing that, like most sectors, has changed. We've had AI for a while and data mining and so forth. What's changed is now the input interfaces are much more humanistic. We can scale up training data a lot faster for new models, and we can, in gen part, we can truly generate an action or an outcome so that's changed the game, and for us as well as everybody else.
Right. Now your background, I think you did ad tech, some martech. I think I saw fintech in there. Why are you doing health?
Yeah, so I've been building companies for about 30 years now. I started my career in investment banking and eventually wanted to be on the operator side of the equation.
Right.
And then if you kind of divide it up into two sections, the first section was kind of ad tech, martech. I don't know why I just gravitated towards, well, I guess it was like I wasn't an ad person or anything like that. I gravitated towards the very data-driven nature of it. Very, sometimes scarily so, just data-driven to figure out this person will respond to this thing. And it's all numbers driven. And then healthcare, I got into it because of a very personal situation of a daughter who had a serious medical event when she was 3. Earlier than that, but when she was 3, she got a kidney transplant and then managed that since. I just, like any entrepreneur, the curse of an entrepreneur is when you see something that's broken, you just figure out you'll just go fix it. Unfortunately, that was my exposure to healthcare, and the startup landscape of healthcare companies is littered with the carcasses of technology people like me that just said, "I will just go and fix it." That's how I got into it, and then I've learned over the time that there are better ways to fix it than others. But yeah, so that's the most recent kind of 10, 15 years have been in healthcare. Because when my daughter went through that situation and I just saw the challenges with healthcare, I decided to devote everything that I do, for-profit and nonprofit, to healthcare. And usually, just given my background, there's some intersection with data-driven intelligence, to its core. So that's probably the through line for the ad tech world and the healthcare world. So at the end of the day, it's all been about discovering some or liberating some piece of data somewhere and pointing compute power at it to generate some insight that has value to somebody. And, when you abstract things at that level, ad you see and an appointment to book that you see kind of is powered by similar things at the end of the day.
Yeah, healthcare is hard. Healthcare is very hard. There's compliance. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of history within healthcare. It makes it hard, but there's definitely a societal benefit that comes along with trying to solve problems in healthcare.
Yeah. It's one of those spaces where you can do well and do good at the same time. You can also do bad. So, you want to stay straight and narrow on it. But when I was doing the ad tech stuff, I did, before my daughter got sick, I just committed to myself. I did want to, work on businesses that, did well and do good at the same time. And ad tech businesses can be that way as well. Just they're not all aimed that way. And so I did,
Right.
yeah. I spent a couple of years. I did work in the fintech space we were talking about earlier a little bit, with microcredit work, basically tiny loans to people in developing countries, and had an organization. We got to about 10 million borrowers, and mostly Southeast Asia, and that was fulfilling to the soul. And then I kind of stumbled into healthcare, but it's turned out to be one of those spaces where you can do well and do good at the same time. And that, to your point about it being hard, that certainly helps with the motivation to stick with, going through hard spaces.
Right. Absolutely. Now everybody's talking about AI, and of course in healthcare, everyone's talking about AI in healthcare. Talk about hard. I think AI is going to be probably more difficult to apply to healthcare in a variety of ways than it is in some other industries. What are your thoughts on AI specifically to
Are you saying that
healthcare?
because of like regulation and
Yep.
privacy and all that kind of jazz?
Privacy and all sorts of elements.
Yeah. So that's true, but I'd caveat it a bit. It depends on your aperture, right? So what I mean by that is, and I think most things in life are this way, right? If I think a lot of people would go where you went with that that thought, right? If you talk about AI, it's healthcare, right? I'm going to go to, I'm using data, there's personal information,
Right.
no, that's no answer to that. But the reality is, all these AI in all its forms, data mining, neural networks, so forth, had been used for decades in healthcare. So like there are many solved problems so if you go in to really any institution these days and get a scan done, something, there's a human that will look at it and
Right.
talk to you about it, but it's almost certainly gone through a system already that's analyzed it to tell that human that this is what you're going to probably see, and then they
Right.
can like overwrite it, right? So like these problems there's a lot of problems that have been solved. And in those cases, to your point, there's already kind of extra security built in, right? So healthcare is one of those spaces, like they're high reliability spaces. So anybody that spent time working with health systems, you would see that, particularly like the quality side of the equation, they have people from, like when I was in the surgery space, we'd have people from the airline industry and the industry of running nuclear reactors and things like that. Like they come and they share the same kind of quality best practices, because it's healthcare. You have to do that. It's as
Right.
important as a plane falling out of the sky. And so like you have that already built into place, and then you have the technology that can drive some of this innovation. There's a lot of protection already in place. It really comes down. It's funny. I was just before this call, I was on a call with the Scottsdale Institute, which is a healthcare think tank we participate in, and we were talking about exactly this issue. And it all came down to the CIOs for the health systems were like, look, it comes down to the use cases, right? So
Right.
analyzing better these scans so that we can make better predictions about a disease progression and hence treatment. That's all supervised by clinicians. Like more of that, absolutely. And we've already got the nuclear reactor airline level protections in place to make sure that it's just gonna enhance what we have already. You get to, I'm gonna use personal health information to target market, to 50-year-old male that needs a colonoscopy, and I'm going to run a colonoscopy ad to them on Amazon. We're not going to cross that line, right? And so,
Right.
so even though, by the way, like clinically, that may be great for everybody, including that person, there's just some lines where, I think but both legally and then as a society, we're probably not ready. So it depends on, are you
Where
patient
you're
facing or
applying it.
not? Are you provider
Yeah.
facing or not? Are you back end or not? But on those provider and back end side, I actually think, I will say, I think there's more latitude to leverage these technologies because they already have a system in place that
Right.
makes sure that it's high reliability system in place. Much more than I would say the ad tech business I came from, that's in many ways the opposite of the equation. Now, since I was doing that work, there's a lot more regulation in place. Europe for GDPR, things like that. It's much more locked down now than it used to be.
Yep.
But I think people would generally say, from what they experience on social media sites and things like that, that's a little bit more Wild Westy than walking to the hospital. So if anything, I think it's more challenging in those other kinds of
right. Yeah, I'm very bullish on AI, especially we have a lot of health tech diagnostic companies using AI that we work with, and very bullish on that. Where I see maybe some more challenges is the different personas of maybe like doctors and things like that using AI, or something breaks when they're doing that, and trying to get that into their hands. I think there depends on the persona.
Yeah, I think it's
User.
I mean, this is a very interesting topic, and I love talking about it because I have, so my perspective is that we've been going down this path for some time now, where statistically speaking, and I'm a data-driven person, it's just almost irrefutable at this point that like the kind of technology to talk about. Now I'll extend it to self-driving cars, these kinds of things, because they have the same through line of like, it's almost irrefutable at this point that if you were to use the technology to do this versus the human, the technology is going to make the better decision the majority of the time. And therefore, if you really care about the well-being of this population, then they should all get a self-driving car. The issue is that we are not wired as humans to, I think, ever accept that. I'll give you an example. The company I did prior to DexCare was in the surgery space, a digital surgery company. We eventually sold it to J&J, and it's kind of one of the lobes of their digital brand, their smart instrumentation platform. Long story short, what it did was we would analyze surgeons. I found this with a surgeon from the UW and in Washington, and we would analyze the motions, literally the movements of the surgeons in an intraoperative field, like inside somebody's body, and we could predict very high reliability on how good somebody was and what outcomes they were going to have and complications and things like that. And the data was irrefutable. Like we did probably 15 different published studies on this to validate it in high impact journals. It worked. It wasn't until we then added a human ex-retired surgeon who also watched the video and provided a voiceover that we could get people to actually buy it. And it's because they needed the color commentary from this person that at the end of the day, just basic statistics, that one person's opinion, I mean, you would, that's not statistically valid, right? What mattered was, was the high fidelity analytics backed by all this training data that said this is what's going on. But they needed that human to also like draw on the video and things like that.
That's interesting. People need people for that trust factor.
We're all humans. And you know what? Even as a data-driven person, I'm thankful for that, because it'd be a pretty miserable world if, like, when we were doing this podcast, you just, you had an avatar, just talk to my avatar, and we made a podcast. Like, we were done with it. And, I mean, so anyway, I like the human element of it. And that's why I think we'll never go 100% data-driven in the world. At least I hope not.
That's interesting.
We're miserable world. Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're humans. We're humans.
Exactly. Like, I mean, who wants to be in a world where it's just avatars talking to each other and bots, and I don't know. I don't even know what we do at that point. So
yeah. Well, I want to get into your background a little bit, and like, I love that. I think there's different flavors of CEOs. I really do. Like, I've worked with hundreds of CEOs, primarily venture backed. And, sometimes you have a product CEO or a sales or a marketing CEO. I think it's interesting to me. It's really interesting to me because I'm geeky when it comes to this stuff. You've had so many early stage companies, 6 or 7. Is that right?
DexCare is my 6th one. Yeah.
Yeah. That you've exited so that's one that's very unique. I don't know why you keep on going. That's another question we're going to ask. But the fact that you started in investment banking, I think, is very interesting. And you keep on, your ethos oftentimes when I've heard you talk is you're very data driven. Like, it's data, if it's information. And I think you're a unique flavor of CEO. And I think I would guess is you're very capital efficient. I would guess that you're very good at making bets with capital in the organization and putting a lot of focus into the things that you feel like will drive efficiency and growth.
You're asking to validate that, or
I'm throwing it out there. Is that right, or am I wrong?
Yeah. So to double click on that one, that is, I would say that, yeah, that's part of the way I approach these. Depends on who you ask what it means to be capital efficient, right?
Right.
A
I think it's definitely a VC term that you typically hear,
yeah,
but
no, but yeah, but
I think it applies internally within organizations as
it
well.
does. That's where I was going to go. So if you talk, so we're fortunate in DexCare as an example where we've done 3 rounds, and so we have investors that have been with us for 4 years. We have ones just came on our Series C
Right.
last year. Like it's a nice mix, and what capital efficiency means to an investor that's been with you 4 or 5 years or longer. Is that it means probably what you would think it literally means, right? Like, great, I'm not wasting money, and ideally, what they're thinking the whole time is they're not gonna have to raise more money and dilute
Right.
more, right?
Right.
Whereas the investor that just got in is thinking, all right, let's put this to work, right? Because we need to get a bigger multiple now because we're at a higher valuation compared to what like my ELT and the employee base would think is it kind of depends there, right? You've got folks that are like, well, I own a decent amount of this. I don't want to get diluted more. And then you've got others that are like, look, I'm dying over here. I need resources. How am I going to get this done? And so my point is, I found that it requires being capital efficient. It requires like being really purposeful about it and intentional and being in control of it, right? Because there are times when I'm building business where you would say that doesn't look very capital efficient at all. Like he's just
Right.
investing in all these things, or over their skis on this, but that's okay. I found as long as you're intentional about in having a plan, right? I'm gonna raise this kind of money over this amount of time. I'm gonna make these bets here and these investments here. I'm gonna overextend here, but I'm gonna probably make sure I got an offset over here to kind of go down over here. And then it's best laid plans and things change, and you do your best to So I would say in some, like, I think you're right that that is part of the way I operate companies to be capital efficient. It's just at any given stage of the company, it would look different to different people, and I think that's okay. I think being capital efficient means that you've tried to figure out the perfect, and nothing's ever perfect, but you've tried to figure out the perfect balance between capital you need and how you need to grow your business, which I think sometimes people think capital efficient means just don't spend money. Well, VCs don't invest in banks, right? And so like, that's not what you're trying to do here. It's trying to make your investments and make your bets on a cadence that works with when you need more money, that works with some dilution profile that everybody, employees can handle as well, that worked with some proactive exit planning that you're trying to get down the road. And so it's a fairly inexact science. I mean,
I think it is science, though. I think, it's funny. I talk about this a lot. I think it's the scientific method. Like from the day one with starting a company, you have some sort of assumption or idea. You go do a bunch of things that kind of validate that, and you learn, and you have this cycle of learning. And what we're all trying to do often at every stage is figure out what works. So once we figure out what something works, we can put more energy, time, and capital behind it. So we can start to validate that. So then we can go to investors and we can say, hey, if you give me $1, now I can validate this probably will make $2 or $3. And then you validate that and you build a team. But I think where I tend to land in companies is Series A, B, and C, where now they're bringing a team together, a bunch of executives that are all proven themselves, and they come in, they all have their own process. And now it's like duct taping a bunch of processes together with these executives because they all have their own process. And so I like to think of it as like an operating system, building a cadence of communication and a learning cycle as we figure out sales, as we figure out product, as we figure out, every element of the business, and putting that together in a cadence that will create momentum, learning, and become a system where we keep on double down, triple down on things that we learn that work.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. You've probably seen too, like that also helps you, motivates you to do more of these things, right? Because there's always something new to, I don't know. I mean, you mentioned I'm on number 6 here, and I don't know if they're like, even on number 6, if it's more or less things that I feel like I figured out. I think you would hope it'd be like more things figured out by now, but
yeah,
No, these are
Well,
all
I think it's interesting because if you think of like the landscape of capital too, like from like LPs investing, they're making bets on funds, and then the funds are making bets on the companies, and then the CEO and leadership team are making bets on what they think can move the needle. Right? Like it's a series of
yeah,
bets, which I
yeah.
think is just an allocation of capital. And then it's like you said, things are going to change. We're going to learn.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on scaling? Do you have to be venture backed to scale? Do you
Hmm.
think people can scale without
Well,
capital?
I mean, they can. It's happened. I mean,
Right.
they're massive private companies that often people don't even realize are private companies, and then lots of flavors in between. So, I mean, you're in this space, so there's kind of a almost religious view of this in two camps, broadly speaking, the bootstrap camp and the other people's money camp.
Right.
I don't know that one is more right than the other. I could say I've firmly been in and will always be in the other people's money camp. It probably was connected to. I mean, I've always been a person that believes in and just understands leverage, less from a debt standpoint. Actually, it doesn't need to be debt, but
Right.
even leverage from just from an asset based standpoint. Just to go back a bit, I worked at a bank in high school. I put myself through college a decent amount. As a stockbroker, got my licenses and stuff then. So I've always been into my and the whole pitch for financial advisory and retirement planning is like build the nest egg now, and then at some
Right.
point, you'll be old enough where you don't even need to take much risk, and it's just you have such a big nest egg, it'll just keep growing, right? And that's what happens. And so I've just always understood that it's not about putting the risk on somebody else. Like I've always invested my own money in all the rounds of all my companies as well. But I just know that uh, there's only so much you can do on your own, right? And it
Right.
gets a little bigger, and folks that have money are part of the equation. The talents you can attract and retain, are part of the equation. Your partners are part of the equation. Your customers are part of the equation. And it's just, I've always believed that like anything we're doing should be big because there's lots of things you can do. And if you're thinking that way, then it's going to require other people to help you get there. And,
Right.
in my experience, the most successful people I know from a wealth standpoint, if that's how you're measuring it, like they've just like they're still like raising money for free. They just up their game, like so
Right.
now like if I was a billionaire, I'm not. If I was, but I mean, the ones I know though, it's not like they say, great, I've got all this money, so I guess I don't
Right.
need it. They're like, well, now I'm gonna do this $10 billion investment. So I can put in
Right.
100, but I need, other people to do that as well. And so I think it's to back up to your question, it's perfectly fine to do things bootstrap. I think once in a while, and I think the math would bear this out, once in a while, but the minority of times it would turn into a Cargill or whatever, some like massive, private company. But the majority of times, it's kind of like if you just think of it logically in life, I can try to do this transformative thing that's going to change the world alone, or I could try to do it with other people. I'd rather bet on other people
Right.
to complement the piece I can bring to the table. The only caveat I'd say is I've never been this is a curse of the kind of entrepreneur I am. I've never been in the camp of like, I should start a yogurt store or a bookstore or something.
Right.
Then I wouldn't, no venture capitalist would give money for that.
Right.
But I'd ruin it too. I would get it and I would say, oh, now we need to have a chain of yogurt stores that are going to take over the world and stuff. And then we'd be to where we started. So
Right.
I think you also need to be wired to be in that other religious camp. It doesn't mean it's wrong, but I think you got to be wired to be that way as well. And I'm just,
yeah, I think it's speed and scale, how fast you want to learn, how fast you want to make change. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And the scale comes, I mean, the money, it's not neither good nor bad. It's just the way the world works. It's like we talked about being human earlier. It's just
Right.
the money helps you scale things. It doesn't mean it's, lock. Obviously, the money, there's lots and lots of examples of people that had money and they blew it. Gets a little bit back to that capital efficiency and being purposeful about it. But I will say, if you're trying to do something big, I think the vast majority of the time you at least have a better shot at doing it if you're leveraging, if you have some leverage, not the debt not debt leverage, but just leverage. If you're trying to do it alone, then you probably have less of a chance of being successful.
Yeah. Well, one of my beliefs around the role of the CEO, I always kind of feel like their role in venture-backed companies is corporate and capital development. Like it's building the organization, having the vision for the future, also making sure that you have the capital to build what you say you want to build. But an element of that, I think, is often lost is having both the visibility forward, but the visibility internally in the organization. I find a lot of CEOs spending a lot of time scoping in, scoping out, solving problems, looking at the big picture, zooming into product things, zooming into sales things. How have you, and you've done this multiple times, how do you create visibility in the organization around goals? How do you create visibility for the team members that have visibility around goals? And because most venture-backed companies are cross-functional, they're venture-backed because it's never been done before. So there's no blueprint. You can't go get the blueprint for this company. How do you create that visibility?
Well, maybe not on how you would like what the answer is. Maybe there's not a blueprint for the solution for problem X, right? And to your point. Although even there, right, you can enter a market and focus on being more operationally efficient with whatever a similar solution. So there are ways to win there too. But yeah, generally I get what you're saying. I think if you interviewed any of my ELT, this company or others, they would say I'm very literal when it comes to OKRs. They're very binary, like here's the goal, we are achieving it or not. Maybe once in a while we'll have like a stretch or something like that.
Right.
But it's very, and we try to math everything we can. And so there's whatever 8 DRs I have on the ELT, kind of organized roughly by functional area. I would say each one probably has, I don't know, 5-ish, 7-ish OKRs, and then they roll up to 3 for the entire company. And like we're doing mid-year performance reviews right now, I mean, it's quite literal. Like, are you achieving or not? If so, you're performing. If not, you're underperforming. And what I tell everybody all the time is like, look, before everybody gets, because that can be, to the human discussion we were having earlier, that can be a bit unsettling for some types of folks. Like, it's just a number here. And what I tell everybody is like, look, we just do this because we have to have, like, the analogy I use is like, you can't, if we're driving down a car, down a road and we're on a windy road, like the first thing we need to do is like wipe mud off the windshield. Like before we even like figure out, do we have the right tires on the car? Are we going to turn here or whatever?
Right.
Like, job number one is just, we got to seek outside and know something's coming. And that's what OKRs and data and dashboards and all that stuff. And then we can make better decisions about it. And then I tell them, just to set expectations. If you're like crushing every OKR, we're going to probably have a conversation about how we set too low goals here, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I expect some underperformance in some things. And what matters, I don't know if this is where you're going, but what matters is, and I've learned this over the years. It took a while for me to learn this, because when I was early in my entrepreneurial career, I'd be like, you got to hit the numbers. If not, we need to get somebody else in. And that's very, unsettling for everybody to do that. What I've learned is that some things are going to be off at some times because it's a startup and that's just the world we live in. And if something's off, that's okay, as long as the person who's responsible for it has a plan. Right? Like, just, not just it's off, because that's just the way the world is. Like, it's off, but here's what I'm going to try. And then I honestly don't even care if that thing they're going to try works, right? Because what I care more about is that they say, and if that doesn't work, I'm going to try this. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to try this. Now, at some point, like, if they've tried so many things, you're like, all right, this is not working. Usually found that people that are just, they don't even need to be brilliant. Like, just smart and just like committed to what you're doing and passionate about it, like they'll figure it out. Like it'll it's a smart team, it's an accomplished team. My concern is not that we're off at any particular point. Like, I assume we're going to be off on something at some point. What I care about is that we're always working the problem, because like we'll eventually figure it out. And so as long as people are doing that, then the very literal interpretation of over underperformance, then it helps give people more, room to operate, because they can be like, I'm on these couple, but I'm missing these other ones here. But hey, we're going to swing it this way this time, or we're going to try this, or I'm going to make a change here. And then that helps me as CEO have a more productive conversation with them. All right, well, do we need to reallocate resources here to make this work? Do you need some help over here? Do you need help from these guys? How are you going to attack this problem? Where it breaks down is when somebody either doesn't have the commitment to try to address the issue, or it may seem counterintuitive, or they say, hey, we've set these goals and I'm crushing all of them. And, I'm only, I'm not even midway through the year. So I guess I'm just coasting for the remainder. That's where the problem there.
Yeah.
Stay away from that.
Well, I totally on board with the same philosophy as you. I think that's how you create visibility. And when you don't have a blueprint for these companies, I think OKRs work really well. I've implemented hundreds of companies using OKRs, and I love to connect like the 3-year vision, the 1-year plan, OKRs, KPIs, into what I like to call as an operating system with a cadence of meetings that keeps the team on course and aligned, focused. But I also believe that's the formula. That's the winning formula to have visibility. And I also love that you said when you set them, you're very, I think you said literal, like it's good to have context of what these goals are. Either we hit them or we didn't hit them. And are they stretch goals? Are they minimum goals? And I think a lot of times I've seen teams fail at OKRs or even goal setting in general when they don't have context of what this goal means.
Yeah. And there's a lot of art into it too. I've learned over the years. I don't have it totally dialed in. I mean, I'm always learning. But for example, so you don't want things that are just layups. At the same time, if somebody's, if they're so high that people always feel like they're losing, because like I believe there's nothing more motivating than winning. Like all these people trying to like engage their teams and stuff. What I learned over the years is like the single most important determinant, I think, is like, are you winning or not? If you're winning, people are behind it. If not, like, it all kind of falls apart.
And that kind of goes with your if you're destroying an easy team, you're not really winning. Right. Yeah. Or if you're getting destroyed by like a superpower team and you're like we can't even compete. They have to find that middle ground.
Yeah. So you have to have things that also aren't always crushing people the other way. So it's a balance, right? And the best way to think of it is just some things are on and some things are off, and you're finding solves for the things that are on. And then we do the various meetings. So we do a weekly ELT this afternoon where we've got a dashboard and we really go down through the it's exception based. Everybody has their charts for their OKRs, and things that are the other way, we talk about if they need any help from others, and things that are doing really well, we take a moment to celebrate and then keep moving. And we do all hands with the company as well. We do all of those things as well. And I will say the one area that I'm focused on most these days, because it seems the hardest one to crack, is so you have company vision that we're usually pretty aligned there. We've got initiatives, we've got OKRs, we've got all these things you can take quite literally. I have found that it can be a key focal point can be product vision, though, tied to that company vision as well, because you get everybody going towards, this inspiring vision. You can get all their OKRs lined up and like, I know whether I'm on it or not. But I've had these situations, I don't know if you have too, where like we've done all those things and we come out the other side of it and like, but this wasn't exactly like, we didn't think the product was going to be like that. Or even worse, like the solution we came out with that's allowing us to achieve our objectives this year, we think now actually isn't going to support the growth next year. And so that's the area that we're focusing a lot on right now. It's just make sure that what we said we were going to do also lines up with, in our minds, what we thought the answer to that was going to be, which to me is product vision. Like, it's not enough just to say, hey, we're going to achieve these numbers to hit this goal. Like, I have in my mind this thing that's going to allow us to change this world. And it doesn't need to be perfectly what's aligned in my mind or the ELT's mind, but it can't be so left field that we're like now uninspired about how we're going to achieve it. So
the one thing that how I solve that with teams is we need to have a product roadmap. And the product roadmap, like any planning, like the next 30 days is a lot easier than a year out or 2, 3, 4 years out, right? So like I kind of envision this, and the analogy, and I used in my book, with peak, is like the mission is like that North Star. We're always going that direction. We're never going to be on the North Star, and we go peak to peak, and 3 peaks out is like that 3-year vision to let's get some sort of context between the big vision and mission, but like some context out that 3 years out. And then we work our way back to the 1 year plan, and we work our way back to 90 days. So we always are doing OKRs every 90 days that anchor to that 1 year plan of objectives. And that product roadmap should align with those 90 days, that 1 year, and that 3 year at least. And just if we're sitting down at base camp, 3 years looking out, it's hard to see 3 peaks away. So it's not going to be as crystal clear as the 1 year, 90 days. And then that cadence of every 90 days and that cadence of annually allows you to pivot and to calibrate and dial it in as you learn more and more, as you kind of get elevated up onto those different, elevations. And then that weekly meeting, which you guys do, is that opportunity every week to dial in things and fix things and triage things that are off.
Well, you've interacted with so many CEOs of companies, right? So you've seen a lot. I'm interested in, I'm going to cheat, made it two. So one question with 2 parts. I'm interested in the most common, through line you found through these CEOs for being successful, and also the most common through line you've seen for they've hit, right? What's like the one mistake that you've seen so many times over and over? It's just like, if your kid was going to start a company, you'd be like, okay, whatever you do, don't do this.
Yeah. So I think the first one, what is the through line on the most successful CEOs? I mean, there's so many elements to this. It's hard to narrow it down, but I do think the ones that have experience in the industry, they've spent time to understand this is the timing. This is the right time to go in and do it. And then they are just learners. They want to try to understand everything, and they have the ability to know that they're never going to understand everything, and that they need to build a team around them that has more knowledge and can do things better than them, but they're just have that desire to learn and to figure out and solve that problem. I think those are the ones that have had the biggest scaled impact of the companies that I've worked with. I mean, the ones that are unicorn status, they put themselves in a position where they could actually grow unicorn company. Now, I've also worked with a lot of companies that had great landings and soft landings that did an amazing job as well, but they tend to be the ones that are very passionate about solving that problem, relentless, and just constant learners, highly collaborative, and build great teams. Because without a team, you can't do any of this. And I think that kind of goes back a little bit to what you said about scaling. Either with venture-backed money, you can hire great people and build a great team. I also believe that if you have a great team, you can keep on calibrating and iterating and finding a blue ocean and finding a spot where you can land if you do it in the right way.
Yeah. Cool.
The ones that tend to fail often, there's a lot of founders out there, I think, that just make big bets and have their eyes shut. They don't have visibility. They might have a great idea. They might have built a great team. They might have raised a lot of money. But when it comes to doing the hard things, like having difficult conversations with their employees, making sure they have the right people in the right roles, and, really doing the work that you need to do to like create symbiosis of a team, that alignment of the team, the right communication patterns of the team, the ones that ignore doing the things that you need to do to build any great team, I think are the ones that tend to fail.
Yeah.
It's like if you had like the best hockey team in the world, but you had no coach, right, and they were all out there just kind of doing it on their own, they tend not to work very well together, and they tend to fail.
I was just going to say, it's funny you said, I was thinking of exactly the sports analogy, right? Because we've all seen in every sport, right, where you get these all-star teams or dream teams or whatever together, and they can get beat by a team that's on an individual basis. They're not the all-star, but they're a cohesive team that has figured out how to find the chinks in the armor on the other side, and so I agree. Yeah, it's tough, right? And that's probably, and that unfortunately is probably the toughest part of, as being a CEO is, especially as you get bigger, like my companies haven't had tens of thousands of people. They've been all kind of thousands or so. But it's, once you get over, honestly, my experience, like once you can't get everybody in the conference room, like get over 50 people or whatever, like it's just, you're going to just get a variety of personalities. And that's the hardest part, like keeping everybody wanting to stay on the ship going where you want it to go. And also being good to them as well. Like, I mean, no, you want people to like want to be there and excited about what
Right.
it's hard. I hear you. Okay.
And I think
Thank
that's
you.
the difference between venture-backed companies and other companies is that, like, as a venture-backed CEO, you are in the center. You're in the hub, and you have to answer to everybody. You want everybody happy. You want to
Yeah.
make it all work out for everybody. And I think at the end of the day, you need some sort of system to do that. Otherwise, you are the system. That doesn't work.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So a final question. This is probably going to be the most difficult question you ever answered in your life. So here's the scenario. You are on a desert island. It's a tropical desert island, so it's very nice. And you have endless food and water and everything. But one thing you don't have, and you're stuck there for the rest of your life, the one thing you don't have is entertainment. But an 80s boombox washed ashore, and you happen to have unlimited batteries, but you can only bring one album to listen to the rest of your life. They're like, what album is it that you're going to bring?
And it's got to be from the 80s? Or does it matter?
It doesn't have to be from the 80s. Any album that you want.
Yeah. What album am I going to bring? Well, and if it had to be, that is a tough question, because it's one of those things where, like, I know the things that I was most into as I was younger, but then I'm like, would I want to listen to that for the rest of my life? I would probably I feel like I need to do something that would be more chill, that I could actually. I don't know. This is the problem. Like, I'm probably ruining this question, because I'm trying
I told
to,
you it was the hardest question, right?
I'm trying to be very like data oriented on it. Like, yeah, it's not the best songs, but I can tolerate it for a longer amount of time. Yeah, I mean, I would probably bring. It's not like the stuff I listen to all the time, but I would probably bring like some jazz album from, like, Thelonious Monk or John Coltrane or something like that, where I'm just like, this, as background music for the rest of my life would be pretty good and happy, as opposed to some Def Leppard album I was into when I was a teenager or something like that, right? That would
Right.
be screwed in my head after a while, right? So yeah, I think that would be something like that, something without lyrics,
Well, Thelonious Monk is amazing. Like, I could definitely get on board with that one. Like, some jazz. Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining me on the show. I appreciate your time and loved your insight.
Thanks. I really appreciate it as well. Yeah, I love the interaction and chatting with a former another kind of another entrepreneur that understands the space. I appreciate you taking the time to have it.